My brother fired me from our father's company in front of 112 employees, 3 local reporters, and the private equity executives who believed they were about to buy us for $18 million. He stood beneath a banner celebrating Cole Furniture's 50th anniversary, thanked me for my years of administrative support, and handed me a white envelope containing 6 weeks of severance. My mother sat at the front table, gripping her champagne glass without meeting my eyes. My younger sister filmed the announcement for the company's social pages. Everyone expected me to cry, shout, or beg for the job I had spent 15 years doing while my brother lived 4 states away. Instead, I opened the envelope, checked the final page, and signed the receipt confirming that I had received it. Then I gave the pen back to him and said, "Before Monday morning, you should ask your buyer to read the property schedule, the licensing agreements, and every contract marked Northline." My brother smiled because he thought I was trying to sound important after being publicly dismissed. "You don't work here anymore, Marin," he said into the microphone. "You don't need to worry about the contracts." He was right about one thing. By Monday morning, I no longer worked for Cole Furniture, but neither did the building, the machinery, the best-selling designs, the commercial website, or the 12 customer agreements responsible for 70% of its revenue. They all belonged to me. My name is Marin Cole. I was 39 when my family discovered that the quiet daughter they had treated like an employee had spent years holding up the company they believed they inherited. To understand why my brother was smiling when he fired me, you need to understand the business our father built and the lie our family told about who had saved it. Cole Furniture began in 1974 inside a rented garage in Grand Rapids, Michigan. My grandfather made dining tables by hand. My father, Owen, expanded the shop into custom commercial furniture for hotels, restaurants, libraries, and universities. He was a gifted craftsman, an impatient businessman, and a father who loved all 3 of his children differently enough that we spent years pretending not to notice. My older brother, Grant, was the son who would carry the name. Our father took him to trade shows, introduced him to suppliers, and gave him a desk in the front office before Grant knew the difference between oak and maple. My younger sister, Paige, was charming, social, and forgiven before she apologized. I was the child who stayed late. I learned the production schedules, payroll system, lumber grades, shipping routes, and quiet emergencies that never appeared in family photographs. When a supplier delivered the wrong veneer, I fixed it. When a hotel demanded 40 replacement nightstands before opening weekend, I slept on a sofa in the finishing room and made sure they shipped. Dad called me dependable. At 12, that sounded like praise. By 30, I understood it meant everyone expected me to carry the weight because I had never dropped it. Grant left Michigan after college and joined a luxury real estate company in Florida. Paige studied marketing, changed careers 4 times, and eventually began helping Mother with charity events. I studied industrial design, then returned home after Dad suffered a minor heart attack. I told myself I would stay 1 year. I remained for 15. At first, I designed a few new pieces and reorganized production. Then the financial crisis hit, hotel projects vanished, and our largest customer canceled a contract after we had already purchased the materials. Dad knew furniture. He did not know how to survive a market where beautiful work could sit unpaid inside a warehouse. I built an online commercial sales division, negotiated smaller projects with restaurant groups, and convinced a hospital network to let us redesign waiting room furniture that could withstand constant cleaning. That contract kept 42 people employed. Dad thanked Grant during the Christmas toast because Grant had introduced us to a banker at a golf tournament 3 years earlier. I told myself it did not matter who received the toast as long as everyone received a paycheck. That became one of the most expensive lies I ever believed. In 2017, an electrical fire destroyed half our manufacturing building. Insurance covered less than expected because Dad had postponed updating the equipment schedule. The company owed money on damaged machinery and could not qualify for another commercial loan. Grant sent a sympathetic email from Miami. Paige posted a childhood photograph of the workshop and wrote that the Cole family would rebuild. I spent 72 hours meeting with bankers, insurers, equipment dealers, and attorneys. When every lender declined, I used the inheritance my maternal aunt had left me, sold the small condominium I owned, and personally purchased the damaged property through a new company called Northline Holdings. I bought the replacement machinery at auction and leased it back to Cole Furniture at a rate just high enough to cover the loan. Dad hated the arrangement because he believed the building should remain in the family company. "It is remaining in the family," I told him. "It is just being protected from the company's creditors." He signed the lease because the alternative was closing. During the rebuilding, I designed a modular furniture collection for boutique hotels. The pieces could be configured for different room sizes, repaired without replacing the full unit, and shipped flat enough to cut transportation costs. Dad called the designs too modern. Grant said hotel owners wanted tradition. Within 18 months, the Northline collection became our highest-selling product line. Because I had created the designs independently while the manufacturing company was unable to pay me, my attorney registered them under Northline and licensed them to Cole Furniture for $1 a year while Dad remained president. The same structure covered the new website, order management platform, product photography, and digital customer database I had built with my own money. Nothing was hidden. Every agreement was drafted by attorneys, approved by Dad, and recorded in the company files. But my family treated paperwork the way people treat pipes inside walls. They assumed it belonged to the house because they had never bothered to ask who installed it. By 2021, the company was profitable again. We had 112 employees, projects across 8 states, and a reputation for delivering custom furniture faster than larger manufacturers. Dad's health deteriorated that winter. He developed kidney disease and began dialysis 3 mornings a week. I drove him to appointments, managed the company, and sat beside him while he complained that hospital chairs were designed by people who hated backs. Grant called every Sunday. Paige visited when she could. Mother told everyone her children were rallying around their father. In practice, I was the one changing his dressings, signing payroll, reviewing bids, and answering production calls from the clinic parking lot. I do not say that to make myself a martyr. I made the choices. I loved my father. What I regret is allowing everyone to describe my sacrifice as temperament, as though I stayed because I naturally required less from life. Dad died 19 months later. His will divided his shares in Cole Furniture equally among the 3 of us. I did not challenge it. Grant owned 1/3 of a company he had not worked inside since his 20s. Paige owned another 1/3. I owned the remaining 1/3, plus Northline Holdings, though neither of them understood what Northline controlled. Mother inherited Dad's personal assets and voting authority over a small block of non-transferable preferred shares that lasted 2 years. In the weeks after the funeral, Grant returned to Michigan wearing dark suits and speaking about legacy. He told employees he had come home to protect what Dad built. The same employees who had watched me run the company welcomed him because grief makes people hungry for familiar stories, and the oldest story at Cole Furniture was that the eldest son would eventually lead it. Grant became interim president after Mother cast her votes for him. I remained chief operating officer. Paige took the title of brand director and began redesigning packaging that had already been redesigned 6 months earlier. I told myself titles did not matter. I still controlled production, contracts, suppliers, and the customer relationships that kept us alive. But Grant did not return to run the company we had. He returned to sell the company he believed he had inherited. Within 3 months, he began meeting with Whitmore Capital, a private equity group buying regional manufacturers. Their representatives toured the factory, praised our margins, and showed unusual interest in the Northline collection. I asked Grant whether he had disclosed that Cole Furniture did not own the property, equipment, intellectual property, or several key contracts. He said the legal team would handle technical details later. "Those are not technical details," I told him. "They are the reason the valuation exists." He leaned back in Dad's old chair and smiled. "Marin, you have spent so long managing problems that you see them even when there aren't any. The buyer thinks the company owns assets it licenses. The family owns everything. No. Different legal entities own different assets. You are the family." It sounded reassuring until I understood what he meant. He believed anything belonging to me was available to him because we shared a last name. Whitmore offered $18 million, subject to due diligence. Grant promised Mother a new house in Florida. Paige began looking at apartments in New York. Neither asked what I wanted. When I said I would not approve a sale until the agreements were reviewed and the employees received protections, Grant accused me of trying to control money that belonged equally to all of us. "You already have a salary," he said. "This is our inheritance. The company is your inheritance. Northline is not." He dismissed the distinction with a wave. That was when I realized he had never read the documents Dad signed after the fire. He saw Northline on invoices and assumed it was an accounting label. Paige knew even less. Mother knew that I owned the building, but she believed I had purchased it on behalf of the family and would transfer it when the time came. "Your father would have wanted everything together," she told me. "Dad signed the agreement separating it, because he was desperate. Because I saved the company." Her face tightened whenever I said that directly. My family preferred the version where Dad's strength had carried us through the fire, and Grant had returned to preserve his legacy. My survival plan did not fit the portrait. Whitmore's initial offer became the center of every conversation. Grant hired consultants, changed his title from interim president to chief executive officer, and began excluding me from meetings. Page produced a glossy anniversary campaign called 50 Years of Coleman Making American Furniture. When I pointed out that women had worked in the company since 1989, including the woman currently running operations, she said the phrase was about tradition, not gender. Then Grant asked me to prepare every operational file for the buyer while refusing to let me attend negotiations. "You are good at details," he said. "Let us handle strategy." I delivered the files, including the leases and licensing agreements, properly indexed. 2 days later, the Northline section disappeared from the electronic data room. When I asked our finance director who had removed it, she looked terrified and said Grant had instructed her to upload only corporate-owned assets. I restored the documents and emailed the buyer's attorney directly, copying our board. Grant entered my office 20 minutes later and closed the door. "You are sabotaging this family." I corrected an incomplete disclosure. "You made us look dishonest. Removing the agreements made us dishonest." He lowered his voice. "Whitmore does not need to understand every arrangement until after closing. After closing, they will own a company that cannot legally use its building, equipment, website, or best-selling products without my consent. You would never withhold consent from your own family." There it was. Not gratitude, not partnership, certainty. Grant had built the entire transaction on the assumption that I would surrender, because I always had. He did not believe I had rights. He believed I had responsibilities wearing the costume of rights. The next week, Mother invited me to dinner. Grant and Paige were already there. A folder rested beside my plate. They called it a family transition agreement. In exchange for a payment of $250,000, I would transfer Northline Holdings to Cole Furniture before the sale, resign as chief operating officer, waive any claim to additional proceeds, and agree not to compete for 5 years. Northline's real estate alone was worth over $6 million. The designs and customer agreements added several million more. Grant spoke as though he were offering generosity. "You will be free," he said. "No more factory emergencies. No more carrying everyone. You want me to give you the company's valuable assets for a fraction of their worth and disappear before the buyer notices." Paige frowned. "Why do you always make everything sound ugly?" "I am reading what the paper says." Mother reached across the table. "Your brother is trying to keep peace. Your father wanted the business to support all of you. It supported all of us because I rebuilt it." "And there it is," Grant said. "The martyr speech." I looked at each of them and understood that this was not confusion. They knew the assets were valuable now. They simply believed family loyalty required me to hand them over. I declined. Grant warned that refusing would jeopardize the sale and cost everyone millions. I told him the buyer was welcome to negotiate with Northline at fair value. Paige said I was choosing money over family. I asked whether she would transfer her 1/3 ownership to me for $250,000. She called the comparison ridiculous. "Exactly," I said. 3 days later, Grant scheduled Cole Furniture's 50th anniversary gala. He invited employees, suppliers, local officials, reporters, and Whitmore's executives. The event was presented as a celebration of Dad and the future of the company. I later learned Grant intended to announce the sale before due diligence was complete. He also intended to remove me publicly, believing an audience would prevent me from objecting. Paige called the plan controlling the narrative. Mother said it would be better for everyone if the transition appeared united. I attended because the employees deserved to see me stand upright. The gala took place inside our largest showroom. Tables stood between bedroom collections and conference furniture. Photographs of Dad covered one wall. A stage had been built beneath the anniversary banner. Grant spoke for 20 minutes about heritage, courage, and returning home to lead. He thanked Mother, Paige, Whitmore Capital, and several men who had not worked one production shift in their lives. Then he invited me onto the stage. I walked up, believing he might finally acknowledge the fire, the hospital contracts, or the years after Dad became ill. Instead, he announced that the company was entering a new era and that my position had been eliminated. Marin's contributions in administration and operational support have been appreciated, he said. But growth requires fresh leadership. Paige applauded first. A few confused people followed. Mother stared at the table. Grant handed me the severance envelope and offered the microphone in case I wanted to say a few words. He expected gratitude or emotion. I looked toward the production team standing at the back, men and women I had hired, trained, defended, and paid during months when our accounts were thin. They looked more frightened than I felt. I took the microphone. "Thank you," I said. "I hope everyone enjoys the evening." Then I signed the receipt for the envelope and returned the pen. Before stepping off the stage, I added, "Grant, please make sure Whitmore reviews every Northline agreement before Monday. Their offer depends on assets Cole Furniture does not own." He laughed into his microphone. "Marin has always worried about paperwork." The room laughed politely because they did not understand. I left without touching the champagne. I did not shut down systems, lock doors, cancel orders, or contact customers. Revenge built on sabotage would have made their accusations useful. I simply stopped protecting them from documents that had existed for years. At 8:07 Monday morning, Whitmore's attorney called me. By 9, its due diligence team had confirmed that Cole Furniture leased the property and equipment from Northline. By 10:30, they discovered that the Northline collection, website platform, and 12 major contracts were licensed rather than owned. At noon, Whitmore suspended the acquisition. Grant called me 16 times. I answered the 17th. "What did you tell them?" he demanded. "The truth. You ruined the sale. The sale was based on assets you did not own. We own 1/3 of Northline through you. That is not how ownership works. You are blackmailing your own family. I have not asked for anything." Whitmore asked what it would cost to acquire or license Northline's assets. I told them I would review a written proposal. He went silent, then said the sentence that ended any remaining doubt. "Dad never should have put those papers in your name." Dad did not put anything in my name. I purchased it. That afternoon, Mother arrived at my house with Paige. Mother cried before sitting down. She said Grant had made a mistake, but that destroying Dad's company would punish innocent employees. I agreed. That was why I had already arranged for Northline to continue honoring the building lease, equipment access, and customer licenses for 90 days. Payroll and current production would not be interrupted. Paige accused me of planning the humiliation. "You knew he would fire you." "I suspected he might, and you let him." "Was I supposed to interrupt him while he was doing exactly what all of you had agreed to?" Mother insisted she had never supported firing me. Paige reminded her that she had approved the press statement. Mother looked away. I asked whether either of them had read the transition agreement they wanted me to sign. Neither answered. "You were willing to take everything I owned," I said, "because you assumed I would not force you to admit it was mine." Mother reached for my hand. I moved it gently away. "What do you want?" she asked. "A fair process. Grant says you want the whole company. Grant says whatever makes him the victim." I offered 3 options. Cole Furniture could purchase Northline's property and assets at independent appraised value. It could renew the leases and licenses at market rates while establishing a professional board with employee representation. Or it could vacate the property after 90 days and stop using Northline's designs, systems, and contracts. Mother called the terms cold. "They are business terms," I said. "You wanted me treated like an outsider when ownership was convenient. Now you want sisterly generosity because the numbers changed." They left without choosing. The following morning, our longtime corporate attorney, Samuel Price, asked me to come to his office. He had represented Dad for 30 years and attended the gala without speaking. From his safe, he removed a sealed envelope addressed to me in my father's handwriting. Dad had given it to him after signing the final Northline agreements, with instructions to deliver it if the family ever challenged my ownership. The letter was 4 pages. Dad admitted he had praised Grant more easily because Grant required praise, while I had made competence look effortless. He wrote that the fire had shown him which child understood the business and which children understood only the story of it. He had kept the company shares equal because he loved us equally and hoped shared ownership would draw us together after his death. But he had insisted that Northline remain mine because he feared Grant would someday confuse inheritance with achievement. The final paragraph said, "Marin, if they ever ask you to surrender what you built in order to prove you love them, remember that love requiring proof through loss is not love, it is appetite." Samuel had a second copy, and a recorded statement from Dad confirming every agreement. Mother had witnessed one of the documents. She had always known Dad intended Northline to remain mine. I did not release the letter publicly. I sent copies to Grant, Paige, and Mother. Grant replied that Dad had been sick and manipulated. Paige said she needed time. Mother called that night and admitted Dad had warned her Grant might return after his death and try to take control. "I thought you would work it out," she said. "You thought I would give in?" She did not deny it. Grant refused every option I offered. He told employees I was holding the company hostage and promised Whitmore would restore the sale. But Whitmore withdrew completely after discovering the incomplete disclosures. Suppliers shortened payment terms. 2 banks declined new financing. Grant rented a temporary warehouse and announced plans to move production, then learned the replacement machinery would cost more than the company could borrow. He tried producing modified versions of my designs, but hotel customers rejected them. He approached the 12 Northline clients and claimed their agreements should remain with the family company. Their attorneys disagreed. I offered every client the choice to stay with Cole Furniture under a temporary sublicense or transfer directly to Northline. 9 transferred. They did not follow me because of revenge. They followed the people who had delivered their projects for years. Employees began calling. I told each one the same thing. I would not recruit anyone while Cole Furniture remained operational. If their employment ended or wages were missed, Northline would accept applications without requiring them to criticize my family. 6 weeks after the gala, Cole Furniture missed payroll. Grant blamed a processing delay. I knew the account balance. By Friday, 57 employees had applied to Northline. I leased a second production facility, purchased additional equipment, and offered jobs based on experience rather than loyalty. Most accepted. Paige called me while the first group completed orientation. "You're taking everyone. They were not paid. You could have funded payroll. You fired me. Grant fired you. You filmed it," she began, crying. Paige was not cruel in the deliberate way Grant was. She had simply spent her life standing near whoever controlled the room. For the first time, the room had become expensive. She admitted Grant had promised her $2 million from the sale and a senior role in the buyer's marketing division. "I thought it was finished," she said. "I thought the deal was real. It might have been if you had negotiated with me instead of trying to erase me." She apologized. I told her I believed she regretted the outcome. Whether she regretted the betrayal would take longer to prove. Cole Furniture filed for bankruptcy protection 4 months later. Grant blamed me in court filings, but the leases and licenses were clear. The corporation possessed the original family name, several older designs, inventory, and substantial debt. At the bankruptcy auction, I purchased the remaining usable designs, customer records, and trademark. I did not buy Bellamy-style revenge by paying pennies for sentimental objects. I paid the professionally assessed value and assumed obligations to customers whose deposits were at risk. Grant attended the auction from the back row. When the sale closed, he approached me in the hallway. "Congratulations," he said. "You finally got everything." "No," I replied. "I already had everything I built. I bought what you broke." He accused me of waiting years for the chance to replace him. I reminded him that he had lived in Florida while I worked beside Dad. "You cannot call it replacement when you were never doing the job." His face changed then, not with shame but with the pain of hearing a truth he had spent his life outrunning. Grant had believed being the son made him the successor. When reality disagreed, he treated reality as theft. I could not repair that for him. I renamed the company, Calder North Furniture. I considered keeping Cole in the name, but Dad's letter changed my mind. A family name should describe the people building the future, not the person whose photograph hangs nearest the entrance. I kept a small brass plate from Dad's first workbench and mounted it inside the new facility. Beneath it, I placed a line from his letter. Inheritance is what reaches your hands. Legacy is what remains after your hands have done the work. Mother did not speak to me for 3 months. She spent Thanksgiving with Grant and Paige in the Florida condominium she had purchased before the sale collapsed. In January, she appeared at my new facility without calling. I found her standing outside the production floor watching former Cole employees assemble a hotel reception desk from one of my designs. She looked smaller than she had at the gala. Not defeated, simply removed from the story she had expected to continue. "Your father would be proud," she said. "He was proud before this." I know. That admission mattered more than praise. She asked whether Grant could have a position in sales. I said he could apply like anyone else, disclose the bankruptcy accurately, and report to a director who was not related to him. Mother said he would find that humiliating. "Then he is not ready to work here." She nodded slowly. Before leaving, she apologized for approving my dismissal. She did not blame grief, Grant, or confusion. She said, "I knew it was wrong, and I believed you would forgive us before we had to face what we were doing." That was the first honest apology anyone in my family offered. I accepted it without restoring the old arrangement. Forgiveness is not the return of unlimited access. Paige eventually joined a nonprofit marketing team and began rebuilding our relationship cautiously. She visits, asks before photographing anything, and no longer refers to the company as ours. Grant moved back to Florida. He sells commercial real estate and sends Mother articles about businesses destroyed by family disputes. He has never mentioned the gala directly. I no longer need him to. Calder North grew faster than I expected, because we began without the weight of pretending who was in charge. Employees received profit-sharing units. 3 production workers joined the advisory board. The designers owned part of what they created. When reporters asked how a 50-year-old family company had become a new employee-centered manufacturer, I did not tell them a revenge story. I told them governance matters. But privately, I remember the envelope, the microphone, and my brother's smile when he believed 6 weeks of severance was the value of 15 years. I remember Mother staring at her glass and Paige holding up her phone. I remember how easily they performed unity while removing the person who had kept the company alive. The most satisfying part was not watching their sale collapse. It was discovering that I could stop carrying people who mistook my strength for permission. For years, I thought being dependable meant preventing every consequence. I paid bills before anyone knew they were late. I solved problems before anyone admitted causing them. I protected my family from the cost of underestimating me, then wondered why they continued. The day Grant fired me, he believed he had removed an employee. In reality, he removed the final barrier between his decisions and their results. I did not destroy Dad's company. I stopped sacrificing my company to preserve their version of Dad's. There is a difference. On the first anniversary of Calder North, we held an open house inside the facility. No reserved tables, no stage, and no family speeches. Employees brought their children. Retired workers returned to see the new production line. Samuel Price attended carrying Dad's original letter in a protective sleeve. Mother came alone and sat beside the finishing crew. Paige helped serve food. Grant was invited. He did not come. At the end of the evening, I stood near Dad's brass plate and watched the people who had built the company sign their names on the back of a new conference table before it was sealed. 137 signatures crossed the wood. Mine was not larger than anyone else's. That was the legacy I wanted. Not a son inheriting a chair, not a daughter quietly holding up a room that refused to name her, but work clearly connected to the hands that made it. My brother fired me because he thought a title gave him power over everything beneath it. He learned too late that ownership is not a microphone, leadership is not inheritance, and family loyalty does not turn another person's property into your reward. The best revenge I ever took was not locking the doors, canceling the contracts, or humiliating him in front of the employees. It was letting him make one decision without rescuing him from what came next, and then building something better with everyone he had treated as replaceable.